It was difficult to just watch the total and utter carnage, the chaos that existed when those protesters who were mostly peaceful tore down the office building, lit cars on fire, and destroyed private property, costing the city that they were in billions of dollars, except for wait, they didn't. A bunch of pro-lifers who were protesting in front of an abortion clinic were hit with and found guilty of 2 federal crimes. Yes, 6 people who were protesting in front of an abortion clinic. If you're gonna call something a protest, this was a protest. It wasn't a riot in the street. Nobody was burning down buildings. Nobody was smashing private property. These people were sitting in a lobby, singing songs and hymns and praying. Again, you don't have to agree with any of that, but relative to the other quote-unquote protests that we've seen recently, this doesn't seem all that bad. I'm gonna play you a clip from this, and we can discuss on the other side. It was difficult to just watch the total and utter carnage, the chaos that existed when those protesters who were mostly peaceful tore down the office building, lit cars on fire, and destroyed private property, costing the city that they were in billions of dollars in damages and hiking up insurance rates for businesses. All of the terrible things happened there in that video clip, except for wait, they didn't. And even though many people with eyeballs, which is most people, think that, well, yeah, that seems like a thing that you should be allowed to do. The feds decided to hit them with charges, and they were recently, yesterday, found guilty of those charges. 6 pro-life protesters were charged with felony counts of participation in a March 2021 prayer event, witnessing to life. I'm reading from the Thomas More Society. The charges included 1 count of violating the FACE Act, which is the freedom of access to clinic entrances, and 1 count of engaging in conspiracy against rights. Charged together, they carry a sentence of up to 11 years and were found guilty of those crimes. Now, notwithstanding the double standards and the hypocrisy and the inconsistencies blow my mind. It is unbelievable that this the federal government, the Biden administration, is throwing the book at people who are sitting on the floor singing when you have literal rioters ravaging an entire town, nobody getting arrested, and those who did get arrested got bailed out by the vice president and the fund that she was a part of. All of that aside, I wonder if this is an interesting point in time for the American people and protesters, not because of witnessing the utter and total hypocrisy, but instead, maybe if there is a bright spot, this could trigger a reversion back to when protesting actually meant something. One of my issues for a long time has been protesters who are protesting in the streets with zero fear of consequences don't have to believe in the thing that they are quote unquote protesting for. They can have ulterior motives if there are no consequences. If you're, let's say, raiding a Walmart and lighting the electronics department on fire, if you have no fear of any sort of repercussion or consequence, your reasoning for doing what you're doing can be a myriad of things. Maybe, just maybe there are some people in those riots that are protesting for injustice and fixing all of the problems, whatever. But at the end of the day, if there's no consequences for you breaking the law in the midst of your protest, that means that you don't really believe in the thing that you're protesting for. If there are consequences and you know about those consequences and you make a conscious decision to do the protest anyway, and again, if they're sitting in here, and we'll get to some of the legality of this quote-unquote FACE Act and whether or not it looks like they actually did break the law, but let's just say hypothetically, for sake of argument, they did break the law. And if they did break the law, and they did do it knowingly, and also didn't destroy property in the meantime, what that says to me is that the people who are sitting in this lobby of this abortion clinic actually believe what they're protesting for. I don't get that from your BLM protesters, your Hamas supporters. Because in the streets, the lefties have just let These people run amok, and because of that, there are so many other people mixed in. I would say the vast majority of the people mixed into those protests, mostly peaceful protests, and riots, who don't actually believe in the cause that they're out there, quote unquote, supporting. Because there are no consequences for people breaking the law on the other side of the aisle, there's no justification and no reason to believe that they believe what they're quote-unquote protesting for. On this side, while I completely disagree with the ruling and the possible sentencing of these people, at the very least, they believe in what they're talking about. And you can disagree. I don't happen to disagree with them. I wholeheartedly agree with their cause and support what they're doing. But at the end of the day, since they know that there are consequences that they will be facing and are willing to do it anyway, that gives credence to what it is that they're doing, as opposed to a bunch of hooligans in a mob terrorizing a city for the sake of fighting for injustice when they know there's no consequences for any of their actions. That's the thought process. I mean, again, hopefully this becomes consistent across all things. And if you arrest people, and I have not been shy about calling for the arrest of all of the protesters who break the law. If you fight a cop in the middle of New York City, you should go to jail. Like, you should be arrested and tried right then and there. Not, oh, let's make sure we don't upset them up. No. Bring in as many police officers, the military if necessary, to arrest anyone and everyone breaking the law willfully. Because at least at that point, you'll know that the people who are there actually believe what they're believing. And if your goal in a protest is to change the hearts and minds of a greater populace, the populace knowing that you believe what it is that you're protesting for helps change those minds. These protesters in this abortion clinic are going to change more hearts and minds than the thugs in Minneapolis or New York City or Philadelphia or any of the places that are just being overrun by mostly peaceful protest. Anyways, to get to the story just a little bit, this is more from that Thomas More Society I thought was interesting. The prosecution relied heavily on a primary witness who participated in and was arrested at the Mount Julian prayer event with these guys' client, a guy named Paul Vaughn, but later turned state's evidence. The government attempted to paint their client as willingly deceiving the police during the gathering at the Mount Julian prayer event, despite witness testimony from a police negotiator who testified that Paul was both helpful, collaborative, and peaceful. So the police themselves said that one of the people that was found guilty of these two, conspiracy and the Face Act, he was helpful, he was collaborative, he was peaceful. Despite the police's own testimony, he was found guilty of that. The government also attempted to paint their client as intending to interfere the operation of the Mount Juliet facility using paper-thin evidence, this is their words, as a member of a criminal conspiracy, despite no evidence of prior knowledge of the event. So this guy, again, I don't know, but it looks like, at least what these guys are saying, is just kind of walking around, oh, look an event that is supporting a thing that I believe in. I'll go participate. And got hit with and found guilty of a conspiracy against rights. I don't know how every single day, wife and I get increasingly more swayed to the side of buying lots of acreage somewhere in the middle of nowhere and just creating a fortress. Every single day it looks like a more and more appealing direction. And this is not dissuading that want. The government also presented an abortion-determined woman who apparently had a scheduled appointment for an abortion but left because of the protesters. They failed to say if the protesters blocked her from going in or just made her feel bad. That's fine. Well, I guess in a loving way, not necessarily making them feel bad intentionally for the sake of making them feel bad, but more of, hey, this is what you're doing. Do you really want to do that? I'm all about that. Forcibly, physically denying someone entry to a place, yeah, that's a problem. But it doesn't appear, I don't know, by the looks of that protest, does it appear that they were doing that sort of thing? My guess is no. And the lady that had a scheduled appointment for an abortion said she left because of the protesters. Okay, well, if they weren't blocking your interest and you were just embarrassed, fine with me. And also probably not illegal. Federal attorneys included an abortion business employee who claimed to be trapped inside the building during the incident, despite the video, which you've all seen, there's multiple videos out there, that showed traffic clearly passing down the hallway to and from the abortion venue. Bottom line is, all of this seems very, very weak. The trial is going to be appealed. obviously. A sentencing date, again, which they face up to 11 years, is set for July, I believe? July 2nd. But holy cow, the consistency.